I have such sights to show you.
What's happening, my fellow geeks and geekettes? Welcome to a brand new episode of Cosplay Chris, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you guys the step-by-step process of making a dynamic display for my Hellraiser Lament configuration prop replica. This stunning work of art comes courtesy of my good friend Will Knoll that has Haunted Knoll on Etsy and Instagram, and the work that has gone into this is absolutely breathtaking. So I reached out to Will and asked him if it was okay I can do a display on this, and also if he could just run through the process of how this is made. So the base wood is paduk, and I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. I believe it is an African based wood, and it just looks the part when it's all done and dusted. So Will evens out the entire piece so it's 3 by 3 by 3. He then goes in with a laser and etches in all the beautiful lament detail. Essentially after that, it's a mixture of metal powders that are embedded in the etching, in the voids, in the crevices that the laser creates, mixed with an adhesive. Once that process is done, it doesn't look very appealing, but after that it's time to sand. After copious amounts of sanding leading up to very high grit sandpapers, you are left with this. So essentially you are just sanding back and revealing all this beautiful detail. If you're in the market for a Lament configuration replica, this is the way to go. Will's work is absolutely beautiful. Even his packaging, the way he packages these with a little note and stuff like that, and a nice little silhouette of Pinhead, it's absolutely breathtaking. So I will leave Will's details down below for his Instagram page and his Etsy store. He also makes other horror related prop replicas, like the key tag from The Shining. It's ridiculous. It's so niche, I love it. So yes, today's video is all about displaying this. I've had this for nearly 2 years now, and I've always had in the back of my head I want to do a display for it. Finally, I was at IKEA the other day and I bought one of those glass domes for 20 bucks that I was going to display it in, and I thought, bugger it, go all out, make a full display. So the idea for the display is we're going to have chains coming up from the base of the glass dome, the wooden dome that houses the glass dome, I should say. So we're going to have 3 hooked chains that are going to be supporting it like a tripod, like a reverse tripod. I'm going to be using balsa wood for floorboards and make it like the chains are bursting out of the floorboards. We're going to be doing gore effects using latex and some red paint to emulate fake blood. We're also going to be using an LED pad to illuminate through the wood panels. So with that being said, let's get to it. Okay, so here are the base materials we're going to be utilizing. Again, the theme is chains and hooks, but I'm going to be displaying the box on an angle, askew, like that. I really do love this particular panel here. Ideally, when you think of the Lament configuration, it's this panel right here. So the chains I'm going to be using is like a jewelry chain from Bunnings. It's actually nickel plated. So what I'm going to be doing is putting the chain on a vise on either side so it's got tension like that. I'm going to be soldering with a blowtorch each linked together so then it can stand upright, ×3. I've also got some assorted fishing hooks. I'm probably going to be going with the larger size here and soldering 3 on each end of the 3 pieces of chain. Now for the floorboards that I'm going to be emulating at the base of the actual glass dome, I just got some assorted balsa wood pieces. You can get this in a pack at Bunnings Warehouse for I think 12 bucks. But the glass dome itself comes from IKEA. It was 20 bucks, and I've seen these on and off for ages, and I always thought it's going to be perfect to display this in. You can get shorter glass domes, but I figured because this is going to be elevated, this is the perfect height. So like I mentioned, we're going to be utilizing an LED pad that's going to be shining through and illuminating through the floorboards, etc. So what we have to do is trace out the LED pad here and engrave into the wood so it can sit flush, and also bore a hole in the middle here so it can illuminate through. We can kind of have that nice blue tinge coming up through the floorboards like in the film and on the poster. Once that's done, we can then glue these down. I also, like I said, want to paint them up, weather them, and then make it appear like the floorboards are broken through and the chains are coming through, suspending the Lament box. Now obviously I don't have the tools here in the unit, so we're going to head to the workshop. So with that being said, let's head to the workshop. Alrighty, so here's the LED pad light that we're going to be mounting under the actual display base itself. So I'm pretty sure I got this from Bunnings in a kit of 4. I've had this lying around for ages, so it's going to be illuminating through here, through the wood panels, the floorboards that we're going to be gluing down here. So we are going to go in with the Dremel and engrave a groove just so this slots in perfectly nice and flush. Now we're also going to be boring out a hole with the boring tool on the top here, just so that light is going to be shining through nicely. Once this stage is done, we're then going to move on to soldering the chain links and the hooks together.
It's now time for some shitty commentary.
So as you can see right here, I'm just going in with my Ryobi rotary tool and just carving out the actual shape. This was actually the most painstaking part to do because I don't have the proper tools to bore out a hole that big. Obviously I've got the boring tool for a hole that big, but not for something that will house the LED pad. So I actually had to go in bit by bit with that same boring tool on the underside of the base. So I've got the basic shape under there, but then I had to grab that boring tool and do it bit by bit by bit, and then grab the rotary tool and then refine the shape again. It was seriously an absolute headache, but it worked out in the end. As you can see, it fits nice and flush there. Now I've got the hobby chain here all linked up, all tethered, tensioned with a fishing hook. So what I'm going to do now is apply some flux. This is just some paste flux, general run-of-the-mill paste flux for soldering. It really does help the solder stick. You really do need flux. And I'm just hitting it with a torch. Now I'm actually using an acid cord solder. It's a metalwork solder you can get from Bunnings, very, very common. And you just want to take your time with it, make sure you're getting the heat right, and then when it's all done and cooled, it should be all linked together and stiff as a board. Now I did clean it, well sorry, I should say I did clean the 3 chain pieces with isopropyl alcohol to get rid of all the leftover flux residue. So now I'm just applying the Balsa Wood floorboards, and I totally forgot how floorboards look. I essentially was just going to line them all up, glue them down. I'm like, wait a minute, you idiot. That's going to look like, you know, a pallet, like a freight pallet. The floorboards are all indifferent and all over the place. And then when that was all done, just got a Stanley knife and just cut off the excess there and went back in with some sandpaper and sanded it all nice and smooth. It's so satisfying to do that part. I don't know what it is. I just love doing that. And as you can see, very safely with a Stanley knife, I'm just extracting and pulling up the floorboard pieces that I want to look broken and, you know, split apart when the chains are bursting through. I really do love how that turned out. Ideally, I would love to have more of a, you know, fragments going everywhere and suspended and stuff like that, but you get the idea. So I'm just going to hot glue in a piece of clear plastic, and this is going to act as the base of our pool that's going to house our resin. So we're going to be using clear casting embedding resin, got our hardener catalyst, and we also have a blue tinter, which you can now get from Tint. They're delving into the realm of resin works, so not a lot was required, only a couple of drops of the hardener and 1 drop of the blue tint. And again, it's just gonna emulate that look from the first film where there's a lot of blues used. And that's what I love about 80s horror, man. There's something about the way horror films were lit and shot, just that nice blue. And we're just pouring it in. Now this stuff does take a good 24 hours to set, so what I'm doing is grabbing a cup that I cut a hole into and placing the chains in so they're going to set perfectly. And then I very carefully lowered the Lament box in place just to make sure that's exactly how this thing is going to be housed. And like I said, let it set for a good 24 hours for it to properly cure and harden. As you can see, I'm just cutting away that paper cup there, and this is what we're left with. Pretty damn cool. Alrighty, now that I've let the resin set for a good 24 hours, we're ready to move on to the next step. But before we go any further, I just want to show you guys something I did. So you see all 3 chains, they do eventually touch at some point. Now what I did, so I grabbed some hobby wire, I wired up the 3 areas where the chains are touching, and that's essentially just going to act as insurance, because you have to keep in mind that the box is quite heavy, and when you do sit it in there, see how it kind of moves a little bit? Just by having the wire there is going to act as insurance, so nothing will bend over time or stuff like that. And also, by the time we're done with the gore effects, you're not even going to notice it. You can't even really notice it now. So yeah, it's just a little bit of insurance. So the next step is we're going to color these floorboards, and for that we're just going to be using some watered down brown and black shoe polish, just staining it until we meet that happy medium and just weathering in between all the slants and where the wood is actually breaking apart. Now also, while the resin was curing, what I did was grab some rubber latex and brush it on this piece of foam core and let it dry overnight. So we're going to peel this off after we do the floorboards. This has been talcum powdered so it won't stick together. And this is going to be our flesh that we can dangle and hang on the hooks, the chains, and on the floor as well. So It's just gonna be one of those things, we'll peel it off here, rip it off in pieces and strategically place it on the display itself. Once that's done, we've got some red paint that's gonna act as blood, and then we're gonna call it a day, and I can show you guys this bad boy in all its glory, housing the beautiful Lament replica from Will, and also the light up feature. I don't know what it is, but there's something about Balsa Wood, the way it absorbs the watered down shoe polish. It looks brilliant. It looks like miniature floorboards, just how porous and grainy it is. It works a treat. Now I am going back in around the perimeters of the slats and just doing a bit of extra weathering with some more brown. And then when it comes to the watered down black shoe polish, I'm really going to town. I really want these floorboards to look like the attic in the first film, where Frank was living, just soiled, disgusting, and just not pristine. Now for the actual outside, I just used a permanent marker, and this is purely just for cosmetic purposes, just to make it look nice and neat. And then we're gonna move on to peeling off our liquid latex. Again, powdered up, talcum powdered up, just so it doesn't stick together, and ripping all the pieces apart. And this particular stage was pretty fun because you get to be very creative and draping the latex around certain parts of the chains and the hooks. And as soon as that cheap and nasty super glue hits it, it just wants to stick to anything. It only takes a couple of seconds and it's stuck there. So again, just draping it around the chain and also throwing some pieces down on the floorboards. Like these chains are burst out with the Lament box and bits of flesh are just left there on the floorboards. Now when it came to the blood, it was just a Dura Max red box spray paint sprayed into a cup and applying it with a hobby brush. And again, be sporadic, be fun, be creative, make it look all meaty and marbled and stuff like that. And then also I wanted like blood spray, blood splatter on the actual floorboards, and you guys have seen me do this technique before, just grabbing a brush with the bristles and flicking the bristles against your piece, and get really creative with this. And also I did go back in by hand and just really accentuate the blood, because again, these chains are bursting out and so is the blood. Like this big just hemorrhage of blood is just splattered out. And then all that was left to do was carefully place the Lament box back in place, and we're ready for the final reveal. And there we have it, our Lament configuration made beautifully by the extremely talented Will Knoll has its final resting place. I'm so happy with how this turned out, and the best thing was it didn't break the bank. With that being said, guys, wherever you are in the world, please have yourselves an absolute cracker of a day. I hope you're well, hope you're happy, be merry, be silly, and until next time, geeks, please always remember,
Cosplayers do it best.